On a brisk Saturday morning, my mom summoned me to the living room, wearing that familiar expression that usually spelled trouble, or one of her wild schemes. Max, our dog, sat by her feet, his tail wagging energetically as if he sensed an adventure on the horizon. I assumed she wanted me to take Max for a walk or assist with some training. However, her next words caught me completely off guard. "Grab your phone," she instructed, a mysterious smile dancing on her lips. "We are going to film something with Max today." Initially, I thought it was another of her DIY projects for social media. She often shared videos of Max performing silly tricks or donning outrageous costumes. But this time, her voice carried an unusual seriousness that made me uneasy. "What kind of video?" I inquired, glancing at Max, who remained blissfully oblivious. "You'll see," she replied, her tone both dismissive and resolute. "Trust me on this, it will benefit all of us." I couldn't shake the feeling that her plan wasn't as innocent as she implied. My mom constantly pushed limits, always chasing the next big idea. She had a knack for making things seem harmless until you found yourself in the thick of it, wondering how you got there. As she left the room to gather her supplies, I sat with Max, stroking his soft fur. He gazed up at me with his big brown eyes, entirely unaware of the strange energy in the room. "What do you think she's planning, buddy?" I whispered. Max simply tilted his head, his usual response when he didn't understand. Moments later, my mom returned, carrying a small box and her phone. Her smile widened as she placed everything on the table. "All right," she said, clapping her hands together. "Let's get started." I had no idea what lay ahead, but I knew it would be unforgettable. I watched as my mom carefully opened the small box she had brought. Inside were seemingly random items: a colorful bandana, a squeaky hamburger-shaped toy, and a small tripod for her phone. Max perked up at the sight of the toy, his tail wagging even more vigorously. "So, what's the plan?" I asked, attempting to sound casual, though a knot of nerves tightened in my stomach. She looked at me with a spark in her eye, the kind she had when she was truly excited. "Just trust me, it's going to be fun. Max will love it, and we'll have something adorable to post." I wanted to believe her, but her vagueness was unsettling. This wasn't the first time she'd enlisted me in one of her ambitious projects. Last month, she attempted to teach Max to sing along to a pop song for a TikTok challenge, which resulted in an hour of chaotic barking and laughter. But this felt different. Her evasiveness made my skin crawl. As she set up the tripod and adjusted the angle, she hummed to herself, completely at ease. "You know, these kinds of videos can go viral," she said over her shoulder. "People love cute dogs. We could even start earning some real money from it." I sighed, leaning back into the couch. My mom had always been obsessed with going viral, as if internet fame could solve all our problems. Since Dad left, she'd been juggling side hustles to make ends meet. And I couldn't really blame her for wanting something more. But using Max, that just didn't sit right with me. "Can you at least tell me what the plan is?" I asked again, trying to sound supportive. She finally looked at me, her expression softening slightly. "It's just a little skit," she explained. "You and Max will act out a scene. It'll be cute, I promise." "A skit," I repeated, raising an eyebrow. "What exactly?" I prompted, but her smile remained unwavering, and she didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took the bandana and gently tied it around Max's neck. "You'll see," she murmured, her voice almost conspiratorial. I glanced at Max, who seemed as content as ever, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that this was about to become more complicated than I had anticipated. As my mom finished adjusting the bandana, she began positioning the tripod and setting up her phone. Her focused and deliberate movements made me feel like the only one in the room questioning the entire endeavor. Max, blissfully unaware, continued wagging his tail and gnawing on the toy. Here's the plan, she finally said, breaking the silence. We are going to pretend Max is solving a mystery. You're the sidekick, and he's the hero. A mystery? I echoed, my voice laced with skepticism. Yeah, like a detective story, she explained, her tone light, as if it were the most obvious idea in the world. Think about it, people love this kind of stuff. It's quirky, it's fun, and it'll showcase Max's personality. Trust me, this could go viral. I wanted to believe her, truly. But the way she dismissed my concerns left me uneasy. It wasn't just about the video, it was the desperation in her eyes, as if she believed this idea could solve everything. All right, I said slowly, trying to go along with it. So, what's the mystery? She beamed, clearly pleased that I wasn't protesting anymore. It's simple. Max is a detective trying to find the missing hamburger toy. I glanced down at Max, who was happily chewing on the very same hamburger toy. You mean the one he already has? No, no, she said, waving her hand dismissively. That's just the setup. We'll take it away, hide it somewhere, and film him searching for it. You'll help him along the way, like his partner. It sounded innocent enough, but her earlier emphasis on the word viral kept me on edge. There had to be more to it. As she elaborated on the plan, I noticed little inconsistencies. She had already chosen specific spots to film, places where Max was supposed to find clues. There was even a small bag of props she had prepared, including a pair of plastic sunglasses she wanted Max to wear for the grand reveal. The more she talked, the more I realized how much effort she'd invested in this. It wasn't just a fun idea, it was something she had been planning for days, maybe even weeks. And while it wasn't unusual for her to dive headfirst into a project, this one felt different. Why does it seem like there's more to this than you're telling me? I finally asked, narrowing my eyes at her. She hesitated for a fraction of a second, barely noticeable, before laughing it off. Don't overthink it, she said. It's just for fun. But that pause, that hesitation, it told me there was definitely more to this. As we began filming, Max played his role perfectly, sniffing around and wagging his tail like the world's cutest detective. But the more I followed my mom's directions, the stranger it all felt. She kept making me reshoot scenes, adjusting angles, and insisting we get it just right. And then, midway through the shoot, she slipped up. Do you think this will impress them? She muttered under her breath, barely audible. Impress who? I asked, stopping in my tracks. Her face went pale for a split second before she forced a smile. No one, it's nothing, let's just keep going. But it wasn't nothing, and I could tell she was hiding something. And whatever it was bigger than a simple video. The tension in the room was palpable now, and even Max seemed to sense it. He stopped wagging his tail and looked up at me, almost as if asking if everything was okay. I wanted to press her for answers, but I knew better than to push too hard. My mom wasn't the type to open up until she was ready, and it was clear she wasn't ready now. So, I had no choice but to play along, though I couldn't shake the sense that this playful video was spiraling into something much larger and more complex than we had anticipated. As filming progressed, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. My mom's excitement was now tinged with urgency. Each time I posed a question, she deflected or redirected my attention back to the mystery we were crafting. Even Max, usually the happiest-go-lucky dog, seemed to pick up on the change. He paced between takes, glancing nervously between my mom and me, a behavior I'd never seen in him before. We moved to the kitchen for the next scene, where Max was supposed to uncover a clue. My mom had tucked a small piece of paper under one of the chairs, marked with what appeared to be a random sequence of numbers. She handed it to me, instructing me to act surprised when Max found it. What's this supposed to mean? I asked, holding up the paper. It's just part of the story, she replied, avoiding eye contact. But why numbers? Shouldn't it relate to the missing toy? It's called building suspense, she said, her voice now sharper. Trust me, it'll make sense later. Her tone silenced me for the moment, but the unease in my chest continued to grow. This wasn't just a light-hearted video anymore. It was turning into a puzzle, one where I lacked too many pieces to see the full picture. As filming continued, small details began to stand out. My mom kept glancing at her phone, quickly hiding messages when I tried to peek. She was more on edge than usual, snapping at me for minor mistakes, or stumbling over her words when I asked about the next scene. Finally, we moved to the backyard for what she called the grand finale. The plan was for Max to solve the mystery by finding the hamburger toy buried in a pile of leaves. She had me scatter the leaves while she adjusted the tripod and set up the perfect shot. While I worked, her phone lit up on the patio table. The screen briefly showed a notification about an upcoming meeting. My heart sank. Was this video really just about going viral, or was there another motive? All right, let's wrap this up, she called, her voice unusually high-pitched. Max was already sniffing around the leaves, tail wagging with excitement. He didn't need much guidance. His love for that squeaky toy was enough motivation. But as he dug through the pile, something unexpected happened. Instead of the toy, Max unearthed a small black notebook. He barked excitedly, pawing at it until I stepped in to pick it up. "What's this?" I asked, holding it up. My mom's face froze. For a fleeting moment, she looked panicked, as if this wasn't part of her plan. Just put that back," she said quickly, her voice trembling. "Why, what is it?" "It's nothing," she snapped, reaching for it. "It's not part of the video, let's just stick to the plan." But her reaction only fueled my curiosity. I opened the notebook before she could intervene, flipping through pages filled with handwritten notes. Some were messy and hard to decipher, but a few stood out. Dates, names, and numbers that matched those on the paper we'd found earlier. "Mom," I said, my voice low. "What is this?" She didn't respond. Instead, she stared at me, her expression a mix of fear and frustration. Max sat between us, head tilted as if sensing the tension mounting. "It's complicated," she finally admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I didn't want you to find out like this." "Find out what?" I pressed, my mind racing. But before she could explain, her phone buzzed again, the screen lighting up with another notification. This time, I caught the sender's name, and suddenly, everything began to make sense. Whatever was happening, it had escalated far beyond a simple video project. The name on the phone's screen was unfamiliar, but the message beneath it sent a chill down my spine, "Ready for tonight. Don't forget the files." I stared at the glowing words, the notebook still clutched in my hand. "Mom, what's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Who is this? What files?" Her expression tightened, the earlier panic replaced by something more inscrutable. For the first time, she seemed truly cornered. "It's not what you think," she said, reaching for the notebook. "I'll explain everything, but you have to trust me." "Trust you?" I pulled back, holding the notebook tighter. "You've been hiding all of this from me. What are you even doing with Max and this whole setup?" She stepped closer, hands outstretched as if to calm me. "It's complicated, okay? I needed your help because people are watching." "Watching?" I echoed, my voice rising. "What do you mean, watching?" Before she could answer, Max began barking again, his nose pressed against the pile of leaves. He pawed furiously, uncovering another object. This time, it wasn't just a toy or something harmless. It was a small, shiny USB drive, its surface scratched but intact. I picked it up, my mind racing. "What is this, and why was it hidden?" Her face paled as she stared at the drive. "That's what they want," she said quietly, almost to herself. Who's they? I demanded. She hesitated, glancing around as if someone might be listening. Then, in a voice barely louder than a whisper, she said, "The people I've been working with, the ones I was trying to impress with this video. It was never just about going viral." "What does this have to do with Max?" I asked, my voice shaking. "And why drag me into it?" "Because they are not just interested in a cute dog video," she said, her voice cracking. "They wanted a cover, something innocent that wouldn't raise questions while I passed this along." She gestured to the USB drive in my hand. "It's information they need, important information." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. This wasn't just about social media or going viral. My mom had gotten herself, and now me, mixed up in something far bigger, and far more dangerous. Before I could respond, Max let out a low growl, something I'd never heard from him before. His eyes were fixed on the fence at the edge of the yard. "What's wrong with him?" I asked, my stomach knotting. She followed his gaze, her expression shifting to one of pure fear. "We don't have time for this," she said, grabbing my arm. "We need to go now." "But go where? What are we running from?" "Not here," she said firmly. "It's not safe anymore." Her urgency propelled me into action, but as we turned toward the house, I caught sight of a figure standing just beyond the fence, a shadowy presence watching us, still and silent. Max growled louder, his body tense and ready. My mom froze, her grip tightening on my arm. "They found us," she whispered. In that moment, everything, the video, the clues, the buried secrets, shifted into something far more terrifying. This was no longer a game. The figure by the fence moved closer, stepping out of the shadows. It was a man dressed in dark clothing, his face partially obscured by a hat. My mom's grip on my arm tightened as she whispered, "Stay behind me." Max, sensing the tension, barked fiercely, his hackles raised in defense. The man stopped a few feet away, raising his hands to show he wasn't a threat. "Relax," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I'm not here to hurt you, I just need the drive." My mom didn't budge. "Who sent you?" she demanded, her voice stronger than I expected. "Same people you've been dealing with," he replied. "But things have changed. You've drawn too much attention, and they are not happy about it," the man said, his tone grave. I glanced between him and my mom, my heart pounding. "What exactly is on this drive?" I asked, holding it up. The man's eyes met mine, his expression turning steely. "It's better you don't know," he replied flatly. "No," I insisted, my voice trembling but resolute. "You've dragged us into this mess. I deserve to know what's going on." The man hesitated before exhaling deeply. "It's corporate data," he confessed. "Sensitive details about deals and contracts, information that could destroy some very influential people." My mom glared at him, her voice sharp. "I didn't agree to be followed or threatened," she snapped. "You promised this would be clean." "It was supposed to be," he retorted, his tone hardening. "But you've complicated things." Before she could respond, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. Two more figures emerged from the side of the house, and unlike the first man, they weren't interested in talking. "Hand it over, now," one of them demanded. Max barked fiercely, positioning himself protectively in front of me. My mom glanced my way, her face pale but determined. "Run," she whispered urgently. "What?" I stammered. "Take Max in the drive," she insisted, pushing me toward the back door. "I'll handle this." "No, I'm not leaving you," I protested, but the urgency in her eyes left no room for argument. "Go," she shouted. Without fully comprehending, Max and I dashed through the house. Behind me, voices rose, angry and frantic, but I didn't dare look back. My hands trembled as I clutched the USB drive, my mind a whirlwind of questions. We burst out the front door and sprinted down the street, my heart hammering in my chest. Max stayed close, his presence a comfort amidst the chaos. As we rounded a corner, a car screeched to a halt in front of us. For a moment, panic gripped me, but then the driver's window rolled down, revealing my mom. "Get in," she yelled, her voice urgent. I didn't hesitate. Max and I jumped into the car, and she sped away, leaving the house and those shadowy figures behind. "How did you?" I began, but she cut me off. "Later," she said, her focus on the road. "We are not out of this yet." As the car raced through the night, she handed me her phone. "There's an address in the notes," she instructed. "That's where we are taking the drive. They'll protect us." I opened the Notes app and froze. The address wasn't some anonymous office or safe house. It was our family cabin, a place we hadn't visited since my dad left. I turned to her, bewildered. "Why there?" She glanced at me briefly, her expression unreadable. "Because your dad's the only one who can fix this." Her words struck me like a blow. The man who had walked out on us years ago was somehow tied to this entire ordeal. The answers I sought only led to more questions. As we drove into the night, one thing was clear: this was far from over. The cabin loomed into view just as dawn's first light crept over the horizon. The sight of it stirred memories I hadn't revisited in years: summer trips, campfires, and the way my dad used to carry me on his shoulders when I was too tired to walk back from the lake. But those memories were a distant echo now. As we pulled up, Max barked softly, his tail wagging uncertainly. My mom cut the engine and turned to me, her face etched with exhaustion, but fortified by resolve. "Stay here," she said firmly. "I'll talk to him first." "No," I replied, clutching the USB drive tightly. "If he's involved in this, I deserve to hear it too." She hesitated, then nodded. Together, we ascended the creaky wooden steps and knocked on the door. The door swung open before we could knock twice, revealing my dad. He looked older and more worn than I remembered. His eyes widened at the sight of us, but he remained silent, stepping aside to let us enter. Inside, the cabin was unchanged, as if frozen in time since the day he left. Without wasting a moment, my mom held up the USB drive. "They are after this," she said. "We need your help." He sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. "I told you not to get involved," he muttered, casting a reproachful glance at my mom. "Don't you dare blame this on me," she snapped back. "You left us to deal with the fallout." "Wait," I interjected, frustration boiling over. "What is going on? Why do they want this so badly? And how are you both connected to it?" My dad looked at me for a long moment, his expression softening. "You're old enough to know now," he said finally. "That drive contains evidence of illegal deals from my old company. When I discovered it, I tried to blow the whistle, but they threatened you both. That's why I left, to keep you safe." "And now?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. "Now they know you're involved," he said, turning to my mom. "We have to end this together." For hours, we devised a plan. My dad contacted someone he trusted in law enforcement, who could handle the evidence safely. Meanwhile, my mom and I kept Max calm, his presence a comforting anchor amid the chaos. By midday, we headed to a meeting point in a busy public park, surrounded by families and joggers, a safe place for the handoff. The tension was palpable, but everything went smoothly. My dad's contact promised to protect us and assured us the evidence would be used to dismantle the corrupt network. As we drove away, the weight of the past few days began to lift. My dad apologized, not just for leaving, but for everything that followed. It wasn't a perfect resolution, but it was a start. When we returned home, the house felt like a sanctuary. Max flopped onto his bed, exhausted but content, while my mom and I sat on the couch, finally able to breathe. Maybe this can still go viral, I joked weakly, holding up my phone. My mom laughed, a genuine laugh for the first time in days. Let's stick to dog tricks next time, she suggested. As the sunlight streamed through the window, it felt like we were finally moving forward, together.